We are recording right here for the Strong as Fuck podcast. I am your host, Kenny Santucci, and I am very pleased to announce my guest today because he's got a great book out that you could pre-order right now called The Dark Side of Discipline. Craig Ballantyne, I've heard your name 800 times from some of the most respected people in my little circle, in my world, and they have nothing but amazing things to say about you. And I'm excited about this phone call for the simple fact that I kind of suffer from a lot of what you talk about in this book. So I'm excited to deep dive into how this could help me and hopefully some of the listeners as well. So Craig, how's things going?
Man, it's going great. I'm super excited. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So you've had, this is what, your third book?
This will be the fourth book. I spent 15 years in the fitness industry. I won't count the stuff that I created then, but the Perfect Day Formula was my first book. It really is about morning routine, structuring your day. Then I wrote Unstoppable, which is about how to get through hell, overcome anxiety, and dominate in business and in life. Because I had 2 anxiety attacks that sent me to the emergency room. We can unpack that if we want.
Yeah.
And then
please.
I wrote the Perfect Week Formula, which is the ultimate time management guide. And those were all written before 2019, and then it's been 6 years since I wrote a book.
Wow. And then what kind of spawned this newest book?
Man, so for years, we have a coaching program for entrepreneurs and high performers, and what we do is we help people, really get systematized in their business and in their personal life, and we use what we call the effortless discipline systems. And I wanted to write a book on that, but it was just kind of like, a lot of it had kind of been done before, and because our stuff is the basics repackaged in our way, simplified as much as possible. And it's like, I don't have a full book here. And then over the last couple of years, I've watched people destroy their dreams on a low level and on a very, very high destructive level with discipline. And that's where the dark side of discipline came in, is watching people take things too far. And listen, you gotta live the book before you can write the book. And I am a person who took it too far as well. So discipline for me has been a double-edged sword. When I was a binge drinker, when I had my anxiety, discipline was my savior. But then I crossed that very thin line, and it is a very thin line, where you become a servant of discipline. So it goes from your savior to you becoming a servant of it. And you get put in a prison of your own making. But the funny thing is the prison doors actually open, and you can walk out of it anytime. But most people we're just so locked on, and so it can destroy our lives. And so sorry, just to finish up there is. I have a lot of, because I've written a lot of books, Kenny, a lot of people say, I want to write a book. I've always wanted to write a book, for years now. And I go, okay. And then I see them again like a year later and I say, how's the book coming? And it's like, oh man, I haven't had time, because they're doing 2 workouts a day. They're cold plunging. They're reading a book a week, not writing a book a year, but they're reading a book a week. And these are good things, right? It's not like, hey man, I've been watching every single, I just finished every single episode on Netflix of every show and I've been binge eating potato chips. No, it's not like that's their life. It's the good is getting in the way of the great. The good is, and I don't want that to happen. And then the real destructive thing that I saw in 4 of my friends is that a couple of them nearly had this happen, and a couple of them actually had their marriages ended because they were so fixated on doing more stuff and running their business that they completely neglected their wife and kids and the time. And I would coach them on like, okay, these are your hard cutoffs for the end of the day, and they never respected it. And the next thing you know, when you're disrespecting your wife, she's out of it. And so that pushed me over the edge, because I was like, man, I can't let this happen to anybody else. And so it's a counterintuitive message that has really ruffled a bunch of feathers. I've gotten on podcasts with people that have pushed back really hard on me. And, by the end of it, I win them over because they talk themselves into like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, oh my God, that is what happened. And so that's how it all breaks down.
Yeah. So, I mean, I want to kind of push back on that a little bit as well. There's definitely that stigma. I listen to a lot of these experts and a lot of people who've become very, very successful, and they're kind of the guy on top of the mountain preaching to everybody, and everybody's like, well, I want to get up there too, so I should probably listen to what this guy's saying. Where do you think people start to lose it? And what do you say to these guys that are like, hey, listen, I've done it before. Everybody wants to get up here, and this is the only way I know up.
Yeah, well, so I run things through filters, and so the book essentially is a filter for decision making. And a couple of the questions that you can ask yourself is the thing I'm doing serving me, or am I serving it? And
Yeah.
so, I had a workout streak of 1,000 days, and I was a servant to the workout streak because I sacrificed other things that would have been a better use of my time because I was so myopic and so nearsighted on the idea that I had to keep this exercise streak going. And, I'm sure you've seen this in New York City, when the weather gets crazy, like when I lived in Toronto, you'd have a lot of snowstorms and ice storms, and you'd see these runners out who couldn't get off their running streak. And running
Yeah.
streaks are a real big thing, right? Like, 10,000 days in a row without, but I would see people slip and fall, and probably they'd be out of running for 6 months because they had this stupid idea that they had to go and run in an ice storm because they had a streak, right? And so that is where you are serving the thing, and it's really hurting you, and the thing is not serving you, which is the way everything should be. The second thing that I say is it necessary or sufficient? So let's run through, like, an ice bath. Is it necessary to be successful? So if I want to be successful, has every successful person done an ice bath? Well, listen, I have done research. Elon doesn't. I haven't found any articles that Taylor Swift does it. I haven't, certainly Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett didn't do ice baths. And so it is not necessary to be successful. So you have to look at what is actually necessary to be successful. It's doing the work, right? It's doing the work, becoming highly skilled. And
But how do you get into the workflow? See, that's where I have a problem with it, and that's where I kind of want to like.
Well, I mean, how on earth did anybody accomplish anything in 1950 if they didn't do an ice bath, right? Like, it's very common now for people to say, oh yeah, well, this guy does it, but it's not necessary. And clearly it wasn't around when people did successful things. Like, I don't think the guys who built the Empire State's Building got up and hit an ice bath before. They probably did because there was no running hot water back then. So maybe that is the secret. And here I am, blowing smoke. But seriously, it's not necessary. And then the other side of it is it sufficient? That if I do an ice bath, that guarantee my success? And I know a lot of people who do ice baths who do not or are not successful. So it is neither necessary nor sufficient. Now you can break it down and go, well, once I started doing it, it helped me. Okay, great. It is serving you. But the big question, the big argument here is let's make sure that all the good things are not clouding out the great things, and that your workout twice a day is not getting in the way of a marriage. So I was on this guy Sean French's podcast. He's a pretty big sized podcast, and he said, one time his wife said, "Hey, let's all go to the beach with the kids." And he looked at her and he said, "But I have to do my second workout of the day for the challenge." And he said, "I got the death stare, and I knew what was coming next if I didn't get my mind right and go to the beach." And so again, can we do these things? Should we do these things? Some of them are great. I'll go, my wife and I will go and do ice baths as a date day. We don't do it regularly, but we'll do it for fun. And I do meditation. I do lots of stuff. I work out every day, but I don't let it get in the way of the great. And that's the thing. That's one of the underlying themes here that we're trying to get through is if it serves you, do it. If it's not serving you, you need to take a hard look at yourself and the activity.
Yeah. Well, some people, I mean, and this might be kind of a controversial take, but some people feel that they need to be in a relationship, right? And sometimes that might not be serving people. Right? So for me, it's that fine balance between all the things that I need to do because I want to build my business, right? I don't have any real other goal right now other than to make what I'm trying to do successful.
Yep.
Will it serve me? I think in the long run, I think there's that dark period that I think we all have to go through. And I think you've probably been through it maybe 2 or 3 times already where you have tunnel vision. There's nothing else that exists but the success of what you're trying to do. And I think then when you get beyond that, then you could kind of reevaluate and say, all right, hey, was it worth it? Was it not? But I think there is a necessary point of life where you have to kind of grind to get to a point where you can now reevaluate your life and say, okay, this was or was not worth it. But I don't know. I think anybody who's done anything great kind of has to go through some level of shit and block out everything else.
So in the book, I describe Charlie Munger, and I say he was the world's most disciplined man. And so Charlie Munger, like when you close your eyes and visualize the word discipline in human format, Charlie isn't what comes up. You think of a guy with a long beard and tattoos on his chest, looking like a Viking, getting out of an ice bath, holding like an axe in his hand or something, right? And Charlie was the complete opposite of that. But what did Charlie do that we can all take lessons from? That supports what you just said. And it is Charlie knew where his finish line was, or, like his treasure map. He knew where the X was on his treasure map, and he had the dotted lines to get there. And even if everybody else was running in the opposite direction, Charlie ran his own race. He ran his own race in life, and he didn't care what anybody else thought or said. And Charlie ended up with everything that most men want: money, power, and respect. He had money, power, and respect, and he didn't do anything. He didn't follow the crowd. So therefore, if you have done the thinking, which Charlie did. Charlie did the hardest discipline thing of all. Everybody brags about doing hard things, but nobody does any thinking, which is much harder than the hard things that they do. So to sit back and think in silence and figure yourself out, to be comfortable in your own skin, to know what your race looks like in life, to know what your treasure map looks like, where the X is, what the treasure is, and how to get there. That's the hardest thing of all to do. And most people won't do it because they're too reactive to their phone. They can't go 5 minutes without a podcast or an audiobook in their ears or their Spotify playlist. But that's what you need to do. And once you've done that, if you've done that and you've figured out that, hey, Craig, my dream life requires me to do these things, and I'm going to set it up, and this is my race, and I don't care what you say, I will shake your hand, I will congratulate you, and I will say, you have done the work, and God bless you, be on with it. But if you are reactive, if you open up your Instagram and you're like, okay, this is what I'm doing today because I ran a marathon, but now everybody's running an ultra marathon. Like it's like this peeing contest of how far you can run, right? Like, well, you ran an ultra marathon, but did you run the Badwater ultra marathon? So now you're still just a marathon pussy in my eyes. Like, it's just so insane. And if you are building your life around what you see on your Explore page and trying to one up the popular reel that you just saw, which I think a lot of people are doing. Like, if you really were into ice baths, you wouldn't selfie it, in my opinion. You would go and you would like be really into it. But everybody, wants to go and do the selfie ice bath. And so I just had this disdain for it because I don't think you're really in it for what it's really meant to be. But if you are, then I will respect that and I will help you succeed if you've done the work, the mental work of thinking and knowing what you want.
Yeah. So for me right now, I mean, one of the things that I deal with is when I've hired marketing teams and different people, PR teams to help me with the event and what I'm trying to do with my business.
This is on New York one in September?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And well, this is the 9th year that we've been doing it. And what some people have told me was that you need to share more. And I feel like that wouldn't serve me because it would just put me in a worse mood to like show every part of the business. So you watch a lot of these founder stories now where they show you the good, the bad, and the ugly of them building the business. They get people's buy-in and then people support whatever business it is, whether it's a soap company or a coffee brand or whatever it is. And sometimes I feel like I should be doing that. But at the end of the day, it's like yesterday I went cold plunging. It was for an event, but it puts me in a better headspace to go and do the workout. But I don't need to share all that shit. But people are like, you need to share and you need to let people into your life to become a better version, to get to that next level, to get the garner the attention that you're trying to get to push through what you're trying to do. But I think,
hey, listen, I know I'm not sure if you're asking me for feedback on it, but I will say I think that there is a lot of truth to it. And so, you know who Chris Bumstead is?
Of course.
Yeah. So I didn't know who he was until last year. And I bring this up for 2 reasons. One, because I think he does a great example of sharing, right? He does a great example of sharing, his bodybuilding journey, what he's going through right now with his injuries. He goes, he shares the companies that he's building. I think he does it in a way that is respectful, tasteful, and makes you want to come along for the ride, right?
Okay.
So I feel like that is a model of doing it. I don't really follow a lot of other people who are showing kind of the ugly side. Although Grant Cardone is showing some ugly stuff right now, and I do check his stuff out.
With all the Gary V stuff, right?
I don't actually follow Gary, but I know what Gary I've seen a lot of people sharing Gary's stuff. So I mean, that guy shared everything, right, for a long
No,
time.
but him and Grant Cardone are going through this thing right now.
Oh, are
You didn't
they?
know about this? Yeah, so they're like suing each other.
No, that's Gary Brecka, not Gary Vee.
Gary Brecka, that's
Yeah,
what
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Gary
the Gary Brecka like stuff that Grant posts, I'm like, this is really bizarre. And
Well, it's almost like distasteful in a way. Like you're a pretty
it
successful
is
guy.
completely distasteful.
Yeah. It's like you're both very successful guys, and you're like kind of airing out your laundry here. I
mean, it was
I don't.
kind of like Elon and Zuckerberg and the whole MMA fight thing.
Yeah,
It's like, it's very and how Elon and Bezos talk about rockets and stuff like that. It's more Elon, I think, but it is childish, and it is like, man, I really I like a lot of your stuff. Can we just skip over this sort of thing? So
Yeah.
don't do that. But I think Bumstead is a great example. And the other reason
Simply because he's Canadian.
I didn't know that for a long time, but yeah, he
Yeah.
is. But I mean, C-Bum, what a guy, and he rocks that mustache pretty darn strong. So, so the other thing I want to bring up about Bumstead is just how there's this thing called mimetic desire, and mimetic desire, I believe, is why people want to. Who don't have a brand to build, but are out there like, showing off cold plunging and stuff like that. And so mimetic desire is where we see people, a bunch of people we respect or we hang around with, and they all have Rolexes. Or, like when I hung around Jay Ferrugia and Luca a lot, you're friends with those guys, they love their sneakers. And I don't. But I was hanging out with them pre-COVID a lot, and going, because I would go down and see this guy Bedros Koulian, and I'd stop and see Jay, and then we'd have the Sunday brunch, and Jay has a ton of people at it, and they were always like rocking these new sneakers, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go and buy a pair of these Air Jordans, and I've worn them like twice because I don't care. I don't care. I was actually like, I told my wife we should go and sell them because I could probably get like okay money for it, but Bumstead, I see Bumstead showing up and in my Explore page, and I'm like, maybe I should go and start natural bodybuilding at 49 years old with 2 messed up shoulders and 3 kids under 3. Like you see how irrational that is,
Yes.
right? But it is the mimetic desire within human beings to want to do what other people do to fit into the tribe. And I feel like that's why people do a lot of these things. And then they get caught up in the thing. And then the thing becomes their life, and it destroys what they were actually after in the first place. And that's the message of the book. But now you have done the thinking, which is different. And so the conversation, has a lot more nuance to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people out there who see, and that's a perfect example. There's a lot of people out there who see someone doing something really well. Let's just say it's bodybuilding, right?
Sure.
Think about it, right? I mean, you're an old school trainer like myself. You've been in the fitness space for a long time. And I remember a time when I became a trainer, and I would tell people out in public, whether I was out at a restaurant or a bar, oh, I'm a trainer. They're like, really? That's what you do? How do you make money? Right?
Right.
Now, we saw this boom right before COVID, the 16, 17, 18, that everybody's like, hey, I want to start doing that too, because now it became cool. Yeah. Right now, I feel like we're seeing that in bodybuilding. A lot of people are doing bodybuilding stuff, but no one's actually competing. And I had actually talked to a couple people about this when I was out at the Arnold. I did a bunch of interviews for the podcast at the Arnold. And I said, what do you guys think? Now, I'm happy that a lot of people are exercising, working out.
Sure.
But it's almost like calling yourself a bodybuilder when you've never actually done a show. It's like calling yourself a trainer, but you don't actually train anybody. Yeah. It's like saying you're an actor without I think we're all kind of suffering from this, like, I see what somebody else is doing, and I want to now do that myself.
Right, because you can just throw it in. You can throw it in your Instagram bio, and who's going to fact check you?
Yeah, and then everybody's just going to be like, "Oh, he must be that because that's what he said he is."
Right.
But when you say like, all right, it's good that, and this is what I was struggling with, when you say, all right, it's good that people are doing this good thing because it's better than them doing some shitty thing, right?
Sure.
Like, I'd rather people be obsessed with the gym and trying to bodybuild and look better and take care of themselves. My whole mission with Strong New York is like, I want to make New York a stronger place. It's the most influential place in the world. Yep. If I could get people here living a better lifestyle, whether it's cold plunging, dancing, yoga, whatever it is, if they start moving and obsessing about themselves a little bit more, they'll be less inclined to be have animosity towards other people, and we make a stronger New York by making people stronger. Right. So for me, I'm like, all right, I encourage people to go work out and become obsessed with these things and follow these people. But when do you think it becomes a problem for them? Like, when does it become like, okay, now you're taking it too far? Like, where do you draw that line?
Well, that is all subjective. And so it is a matter of, first of all, figuring ourselves out, which, again, most people just won't do because it is, we live in a reactive world. And so, it is very hard to get people to do that. But if you figured yourself out and you know what you want, then it is a subjective thing. Like, okay, so if you work out 4 times a week right now, and then you go to 5, and then you go to 7, and you go to twice a day. Well, I mean, obviously at some point in there, the law of diminishing returns is going to kick in. The time is going to take away from the other things that you want to do. And I don't know exactly where it is going to be for every individual person, but there's definitely going to be a point where the good is getting in the way of the great. And someone who's figured themselves out is going to know when that's happening, because they're going to have regret. They're going to have and like relatively acute and immediate regret, and they're going to know when they feel like they're trapped inside of a prison. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to be able to walk out of it. There's a lot of people who know they're trapped by alcohol, who know they're trapped by anorexia, and can't walk out of it because it's there's some mental component to it. But people who are listening, it's just all this self-reflection and evaluation. Like, is what I'm doing serving me, or am I serving it? And is this good stuff getting in the way of the great? And then, we can walk backwards from there and reverse engineer. How can we do a little bit less, still get the maximum results? Because even when I was in the fitness space, my program was all about how can I get the maximum results in the minimum time? Because I knew that people were busy. And so it's the same sort of thing. It's like, how can we get the maximum benefits? Like, do we need to cold plunge every day? Do we, can we do it on a less frequent basis? What else is there that can provide us the results that we're looking for? And so it really is like, I'd have to chat with every single person. And usually what you do is if you ask somebody the right questions, eventually they'll have an aha moment. So it's like Socratic questioning of, so how do you feel when you do that sort of thing? What do you think, if somebody else was doing this and they described their day to you, what would you tell them? What advice would you give to somebody else in the same situation? And usually they can talk themselves into the truth, because that's the only time they've done that self-reflection, is you questioning them to figure out their life.
Yeah, no, I agree. One of the things that I've actually been struggling with, and I talked to, and I know a lot of my clients, and I'm sure there's some people out there who could relate to this. Before COVID, I live in New York City. Everyone in New York City goes out to eat all the time, goes drinking. There was all this research, the Peter Attias and the Andrew Hubermans were putting out all this information and content about the effects of alcohol on the brain and the body, marijuana, recreational drugs. Since COVID, I've cut my drinking significantly down, right? Maybe I'll drink a couple times a year. And only because I now know the effects of it, I understand the science behind it. However, when it started to impede on enjoying my life, right? Going to weddings, hanging out with friends, what I tell my clients is, you could cut out alcohol out of your life, but when it starts to encroach or take over your life to the point where it's like you can't go out with your wife on a Friday night because you're like, I can't be around a glass of wine, this is terrible. Cutting out things like that. Like, we all know the effects of alcohol are bad. It's like putting poison in your body. So you look at it from the scientific point of view. But I think there's a benefit to it when it brings people together. There's a benefit to bring. What I think is just as important as building a healthy body is also building a healthy community and having good people around you and the right people around you. And sometimes you have to congregate around alcohol or, some people marijuana, whatever it may be. Sure. What are your thoughts on that?
So everybody knows somebody who's either never drank or doesn't drink now. And I'm not the most social person in the world, but I even knew plenty of people who could go out. I mean, when we went when I was younger and went like super partying, there was always like somebody who didn't drink and was having a good time. And it is possible to do.
Yes.
And I personally am now able to do it. So I used to be a binge drinker, like super frat boy for way too long. And then I became a social drinker. And then I became like a once, probably where you are right now, once a month. And then one night I had one drink. I slept horrible. I felt like I had, drank 10 beers the night before. And I said, that's enough. That was November of 2021. And, right around the same time, I heard this quote that is, it's easier to be 100% out than 99% out. For me, that's true. Now, I understand what you're saying, that, if you go to these events, that, the peer pressure can be really annoying and that sort of stuff. But there's just like, how personal training got really popular in 2016, 17, 18. The zero proof alcohol scene is insane right now.
It's crazy.
Like, you can go anywhere and the mocktail things are good, and
which never existed before.
Right. And
Yeah.
I drink Heineken Zero. If it's cold and in a bottle, it doesn't taste that bad. So I will drink Heineken Zero from time to time. But I just switched my identity from like, I'm the type of person, who drinks socially, to I'm the type of person who just doesn't drink. Like, I don't consume alcohol. But even though I have strong introverted tendencies and I don't consume alcohol, I can go out and be a social person. And, the first person I ever met who had never had a drop of alcohol in their life was Lewis Howes. And I don't know if he's still, but I met him in 2009 and he said, yeah, I've never had a drop of alcohol in my life. And this was right when he was taking off with his he had a LinkedIn business before he had the School of Greatness podcast, and it was really taking off. And I was like, the dude's a good dude. And if this guy can go and never have a drop of alcohol, like, this is possible. And so all of this stuff is possible. It's just a matter of, planning and preparation. Like, what are you going to say when somebody keeps hounding you to have a drink? What are you going to drink instead of the alcohol? And now there's a whole lot more options. And then it is simply a matter of identity change, which, is, I think, probably one of the best things that has been popularized in personal development in the last 15 years because of James Clear's Atomic Habits. But if you shift your identity from, I'm the type of person who drinks socially, to, I just don't consume alcohol, period, the end. I can go anywhere, and I don't have to have that internal battle that I used to have for so many years about humming and hawing. Oh, I want to drink, but I know I shouldn't have one because tomorrow I'm going to wake up tired. I can go anywhere with anyone, and I simply will not have a drink, because not only have I shifted my identity, but I've told so many people that I don't drink that I don't want to be a hypocrite.
Yeah.
So I know that it is possible. And I think once you start spending more time around people who don't drink, there are a lot of them out there, and you start to see like, oh, that person does, that person does. Like, actually, it's not impossible. It's definitely not impossible, and it may not even be that hard once you commit to it. So if you commit to it and you go all in and you get that accountability and you tell the world, like, I'm not going to drink for 2026 or the rest of 2025, period. Let's do it. Let's see what happens. And you're going to learn a lot about yourself. And that's a challenge that I think would be far more valuable to somebody than cold plunging. And that's one of the lessons that I want to teach in the book, is that there's all types of physical hardships you can give yourself. But I truly believe that discipline is not a transferable trait. So people believe that if they go and do 2 workouts a day, or they do 100 push-ups in 100 days, or they do, read a book a week, or they do cold plunging, that therefore every aspect of their life will improve. But to me, that's not true. That's like saying if you go do leg extensions, your squat's going to go to 1,000 pounds. There's specificity in training, and I believe there's specificity in discipline, because Tiger Woods shows you that you can be the world's most disciplined. He was the world's most disciplined golfer. Other golfers feared him because he was on the range 12 to 14 hours a day when he was at the top of his game. Like, this guy's the greatest in the world, and he's still doing 12 to 14 hours a day. But he was the world's most undisciplined man when it came to marriage. Like, how can this man be the world's most disciplined and the world's most undisciplined at the same time? Well, it's because those are 2 separate areas of discipline.
Yeah.
And they are not the same thing, and therefore you have to be careful about what you expect from when you add one of these habits that you see other people doing.
Yeah. No, and that's, I think we've all been programmed in the last couple of years. And I think a lot of this started pre-COVID, but I think a lot of the stuff from, when we were all sitting around consuming so much social media.
Right.
It's this idea that you have to get up and meditate, and like we admire these people who are getting up and journaling and all this bullshit. And I've never been one of these people. I find it fascinating that somebody has that much time and effort in their day to get up and do all these things. What do you say to the people who are like, hey, this is what I've been doing, this has really worked for me? I think you're going against the grain here, which I think is your point, to say like, hey, all these things that everybody's saying, this discipline kind of psychology of like, the more hard shit I put into my day, the better I get. And you're saying, hey, it's kind of the opposite in a way, correct?
Right. So again, at the end of the day is we need to figure out what you want to achieve. Mm-hmm. And then we need to build a custom plan for you to get there. And if the custom plan, that it makes sense rationally for you to insert, whether it's journaling or whether it's a cold plunge or whether it's a cold shower or whether it's, you doing a triathlon, doesn't make sense. I was on a podcast with David Meltzer, who's a famous guy out of LA and a New Yorker. And I was explaining the book, and David says to the New York guy, he goes right on, see, this is what I've been telling you about all those marathons that you do. You want to become one of the best speakers in the world, but you always say you don't have time to do this stuff because you're out running all those marathons. It was really kind of funny. Because
it's so true.
There are all of these things which, to the outside eyes, I think that's what is missing from a lot of people's lives, is that they either don't do self-reflection externally, which is like a stoicism thing, where you externally watch yourself going through your day and the activities and how you interact with people, and then kind of figuring out how you can get better, or having a coach. Like, you need somebody externally watching how you squat, how you do push-ups, to give you feedback on your form. And it's the same in life. Like, if somebody, and you can do this by like explaining your life to somebody and kind of listening outside, or just like saying, hey, what do you think about this? So I really want to become the world's best speaker, but I also want to train for a marathon, which is going to take me about 15 hours a week. And I also run a business, which takes me about 45 hours a week. And I have a family and 2 kids. Which one of these things should go if my number one goal is to become, the world's best speaker? And the answer is obvious.
Yeah.
And again, like, we have to reflect on our lives. Otherwise, the next 3 years go by, and that great thing, whether it's the book, whether it's the speaking, whether it's, leaving your corporate job and starting a side hustle that can then replace your corporate job or just add to it, or you want to switch careers, or you do want to get married and have kids, like, those things just get put off and put off. And I'm lucky that I'm a man, because I put off my family life until I was in my 40s. Now,
how old were you?
I was 46 when I had my first kid. So I have 3 kids under 3 at the age of 49.
Okay. I'm in a similar boat. I'm 42 and I'm not married or anything. So I think
you're like so young, like as a man, like,
yeah.
Robert De Niro and Pacino is still having kids, man. They're like 143 or something. They're like biblical. So I joke, and I shouldn't joke, because there's probably some women out there who probably don't think this is funny, right? But you, I have some family members who were very successful females in the corporate world, and don't have kids, and probably wanted to have kids. And earlier, before, you were saying that people go through these times, and then you just look back, and eventually you have to figure out whether it's worth it. And in most cases, things are, you can, like, okay, maybe that wasn't worth it, but I did it, and I learned some lessons. Like, in most cases, you can always look on the bright side of it. But on that female side, like, you can't look back at age 43 and go, I'm not sure if it was worth it. Like, you have gone too far. And I don't know, I'm not saying like I'm an expert in relationships and stuff, but there's a parallel here. It's like, we really need to be careful about going too far, because I've gone too far in my life. And this is word of warning to everybody. Like, the pendulum, don't swing the pendulum too far in your life that you miss out on the most important thing. How do you know what the most important thing is? You go back, you figure out what exactly matters to you in your life, not what you see other people pursuing, but what do you want to pursue in your life? And then like, I'm not saying you have to have kids, but if you really want to have kids and everybody you hang around with is like, I don't ever want to have kids, well, chances of you like breaking free of that are probably not very good. So just understand that some decisions, there's a great James Clear quote. He says, if a decision is reversible, make it really fast. Success loves speed. But if the decision is irreversible, you have to make that slowly. And so there's not very many decisions in life that are irreversible, like like deciding whether or not to have kids as a woman in your 30s, right? And
Yeah.
if you say no, I don't want kids, and then you hit 40, it's pretty tough. We know some people who do, but and I know that's kind of like that's definitely outside of my scope of expertise to be talking about whether or not a woman should have kids. But it has some parallels to what we're doing. Are we doing the thing that's right for us?
So I admire guys like you because you've taken what we've done as a career, I've been doing for the past couple of years now, being a trainer, and you've kind of taken what people expect a trainer to be, disciplined, put together, and you've turned it into this other career. When did you start to see that some of the disciplines that you've adopted, when was that turning point for you? And like, what are some of the disciplines that you've seen affect your life in a negative way?
Yeah, so I talk about this in the book. I forget what year it was, but every year from 2010 2019, I did an entrepreneurship camp in Lithuania, of all places. Long backstory, but so I would go from Toronto to Lithuania every summer.
How the fuck did you find that?
So one of my friends, was connected with all these older investor guys, and in the 1990s, when the Berlin Wall fell and all that stuff happened, these investor guys, these free market capitalist guys, got invited over to Eastern Europe to do these events, like to teach the entrepreneurship to young people. And so my friend went to one in like 2006 or something in, I forget what country. It might have been Lithuania, but it might have been a different country. And he was like, this is okay, but it's like old men talking here, and the young kids maybe aren't getting it. So he decided to do his own. And the person that helped him set it up was from Lithuania, just outside of Vilnius. And so he had this first camp, and he invited me because I knew him. The guy's name is Simon Black from a company called Sovereign Man, which helps you do with like second passports and stuff. Pretty cool guy. And so we went over and we did this for 10 years. At first it was just drunken Polish and Russian kids, but then every year it got better. So like some of the kids by the end of the camp had already built and sold $10 million businesses. So it was a pretty cool group. But what the heck was I? Oh yeah, so I have to go over to Lithuania every summer, and from Toronto you fly overnight to like Munich or Frankfurt, and then you hop another flight, or Copenhagen in this case, and then you hop another flight and you get to Vilnius. And so this was during my 1,000 days of exercise in a row. And I fly from Toronto to Copenhagen, and in Copenhagen I was on from there I was flying on SAS, which is like Scandinavian Airlines, and I get to go into the lounge, and I'm like, I don't want to miss my workout streak because I know I'm going to get to the camp and people are going to want to go out for dinner, and I'm not going to have time to work out there. And I was really grumpy, and I'm like, I'm going to work out here in the airport lounge bathroom. So I'm doing like push-ups and squats on dirty bathroom floor, and it was a big bathroom because it was like in one of those lounges and stuff. But I'm like, this is like a low point in my life. And
yeah.
I didn't stop then. I continued on for the streak. But that was like a self-embarrassing moment. And again, so on outside eyes, like when I thought about it as not myself, but I thought about it somebody watching the movie of my life, the person would be like, what a weirdo. Like, that's really like bizarre. And when you have one of those moments, that should be a warning sign that you've gone too far in something, and you probably want to reel it back in. And so, it wasn't too long after that I kind of let it go. But that was, and that got in the way of my life. Now, I'm also, I have strong introverted tendencies, and, I'm just did not become mature enough to like, handle rejection in relationships and stuff. So I started using my discipline, like, I can't go to this social event. I didn't want to hang around groups of people anyways, but also, I got to go to bed at 8:00 and get up at 4:00. I just do that every single day. And so I'm skipping social events and stuff like that. And, as I skipped it, I'm like, man, this is stupid. Why am I doing this? I know I should go. And so just having those, that self-awareness again, it was like people listening to this, especially anybody who's social, you're like, man, this dude's real weird, because it's a weird behavior. It's like not conducive to what I wanted to achieve. And so I got over that and, met my wife, and, life is good now. But the rigidity of certain things, the fact that I couldn't miss it, the rigidity idea that if I don't do this, I won't be able to do other things like that. When I hear people that they have to do a certain thing in the morning so that they're mentally prepared, I think that's a warning sign. Like if you can't have a good day because you didn't do your cold plunge, well, what happens when you can't? Like what happens when it's broken? What happens when you're on vacation? And like, do you then have your mind is like, well, you're going to have a crappy day. You can't go through life like that. You have to be, that's a fragile approach to life. You have to be anti-fragile, that, whenever you're met with a challenge, that you actually get stronger from it. And so I found that even though I was super disciplined, I was becoming a fragile person, because if I didn't do the thing, it affected my mood. And that's not, that's another warning sign. And, fortunately I got out of that, but that's a warning sign to you. So, it's all these like checks and balances that people listening to should just take 5 or 10 minutes and think like, again, I've used this line a couple times. Is the thing serving me, or am I serving it? Is this thing affecting my mood if I don't do it? And am I becoming fragile, or am I becoming anti-fragile in my living? And so that's what we want to do. We're doing these things because we think they're good, and we want to make sure that they are good for us. And if they're actually a net negative, then we need to move on from them.
My question to you is, because I put myself in your shoes. There have been certain situations where I've flown somewhere. For instance, last week or 2 weeks ago, I was in Vegas. I went to the HFA show, and it's the old Ursa show. Okay. So I was out there. I got in that night, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'll go down to the lobby, go have a drink, hang out, maybe meet somebody. I do believe there is so much value in listening to people's stories. That's why I love doing the podcast.
Sure.
Listening to people's stories, meeting new people. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to the gym. And I said, if I get in an Uber and go to the gym, I'm just going to have it take me right there, and I'll go. So I ended up going to the gym. I worked out for about an hour and a half.
Did you go to Dragon Slayer?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay.
Of course. Yeah. So then, but when I got back to my hotel room, I was like, oh, maybe I should do a little bit more, because they had closed down. I got in pretty late and stuff. I'm putting myself in your shoes, where you're in this bathroom in the middle of nowhere. And I've been in that situation before. I'm like, I got to get a workout in. I have to get this in. But for me, I think I would have probably just been like, fuck it, I'm not going to do this. Where do you think that level of discipline and desire to, hold that so true to yourself? Because no one's going to know if you didn't do that workout, right? So where do you think that level of discipline for you came from? And then how did you slowly let that go? Because that seems like most people, if they saw you doing this, would be like, this guy's fucked up. He's got some disorder or something. So how do you go?
That's so Ferrugia. The way he said that.
So
yeah, it's a good question. So
yeah.
So I think the first thing around the workouts was, and you're a trainer, I'm a trainer. We know workouts are to be done for a training effect. And so when you're working out 1,000 days in a row, and sometimes if all I really want to do is get strong, and I'm doing a bunch of body weight crap in a airline bathroom, how is that actually improving? Is there a training effect here? And in fact, there's not. Not only is there not a training effect for me, so there's no benefit to my ultimate goal, but there's actually a detriment, because I just woke up from an overnight flight. I'm probably dehydrated. Did I warm up properly? And now I'm adding extra volume on my shoulders, which are already kind of beat up. That's just dumb. Would you let a client do that? No, you wouldn't tell a client to do that. So why was I doing it? So I think that's one way that you have to think about it. If I was my client, what would I tell my client to do in this situation, knowing their physical fitness goals? Should they go and do the workout? Because, as we do this podcast, I think about, the Kobe Bryant in the pajamas shooting free throws with his broken arm and in his pajamas at 4:00 in the morning. That post gets on my feed quite a bit. Now, if he's doing that, there's a benefit to him doing that. Obviously, like, that's kind of weird and like that's extreme, but if he wants to shoot free throws with a broken arm so that he's better at it and, you know, improves, and, you know, maybe there's some cross training over to his good arm that is all messed up, it actually makes sense. But to work out, if you want to build muscle and get strong, to do a body weight workout in your hotel room and high volume, and, you know, maybe already have a little bit of an injury, it just doesn't actually make sense. Mm-hmm. So you're actually an expert in that, and you can make that decision. And so that's the way that I would look at it, in order to, again, figure out, do that self-reflection on where's it going too far.
Yeah. On to the personal stuff. You know, I told you I kind of have a similar situation. I haven't been in a relationship for quite some time now, simply because I've been more focused on my business and building this, because I've made that decision that I don't want to half-ass my personal life and I don't want to half-ass my work life at the same time. I gotta get myself to where I feel comfortable here, and then I could worry about this other thing. Because if and when I do have kids, I mean, you have little kids, like, those are the best times. I think the first 5 years of their life are the most important, when they're still in the house all the time, and you could spend
amazing,
time.
Man. It's
right?
Really great.
So I want to be there for all that. And if I had kids right now, it's like I really couldn't. I'd almost be resentful because I am missing work stuff to be with the kids, or I'm missing the kids to be with work stuff. Like, I know I've done the thought. I've thought about it a lot. I'm like, all right, I don't really see myself doing that right now. How did you kind of, at 46 years old, say, all right, I'm going to take this next step?
Well, I mean, I wanted to for a long time. And so I've been setting my life up for it forever. And my situation is much different because, you know, I haven't been working in a gym. I haven't been tied down to location or regular work hours for a long, long time. So what I would do if I were you is I would, you know, like, I was just looking, you know, randomly, Mark Magna had a post that crossed my feed today. And Mark, you know, runs Anatomy down in Miami, busy as heck. You know, has at least one kid, maybe two. And I'd look at people like that and I would say, it's possible to do. And, you know, there's a lot of busy people. I'm sure you have so many clients that come in that are very busy, very successful, have young kids. You know, Jesse Itzler and Sarah Blakely have 4 kids. Like, how the heck do they do it? They're billionaires running like 19 businesses. How do they do it? It can be done. And obviously, you know, you won't be able to see them 24 hours a day, but you can get quality time with them. And you can, so it doesn't have to be sequential, essentially. It can be simultaneous. And millions of people have done this. And, you know, a lot of people have done it wrong. I don't want to say that there's not a wrong way of doing it.
I think there's more people doing it wrong than doing it right these days.
Sure. And even people with a lot of time are doing it and are doing it wrong. But the fact that you know what right is shows that there's a great chance you'll do it right. You see what I mean? Like, you're aware that there's a right way to do it. And I think, you know, so, like, are you pretty good friends with Luca, or you just kind of know him?
No, I could call Luca right now. I love
right.
Yeah.
So I bust on Luca all the time because, you know, for everybody listening, our friend Luca Hokovor is, you know, a gym owner too, and he's a really great dude, and he's having his first kid, and I bust on him all the time. I'm like, Luca, you're like, all the project, like, Jay Ferrugia made a post about Luca and said, I get stressed out when I see Luca's to-do list. Like, and you know, because Jay is like pretty chill. Luca has a lot going on, and I've been warning him for the last several months. And I just did his podcast and, you know, warned him on the podcast again too. So it's not like this is private knowledge. I warned him, like, dude, you have to cut things. You have to be ruthless in saying no. And can you be ruthless in saying no and cut things, still be successful, and make time for your family? And I truly believe that you can, because I've coached people who have made way more money than me and have an amazing family dynamic, have amazing relationship with their kids. Did they spend all day with them? No, they went to work for 8, 9, 10 hours a day. They did. But the loving home environment in which the children needs was there. And there was the consistency and routine. And so when I think back to my childhood, where my mother was an amazing farm wife. I grew up on a farm in Canada. My dad was an alcoholic, and he was not a great father in many ways. But the one thing that I look back on fondly and with safety is that I knew where they were all the time. Mm-hmm. That I actually did spend a lot of time with my dad because I couldn't. You can't do this these days. But like they left me alone as a 4-year-old kid in the house. We didn't have any money to afford for childcare. So I spent a lot of time with my dad before I went to kindergarten on the farm. And so I spent a lot of time with him. But he wasn't great in certain aspects. But he was consistently there. And that's what matters. In the child's eyes, they want to know where mommy and daddy are. They want to have time with them. And so listen, as a person who actually does spend 6, 8, 10 hours a day with my kids, like it's still not enough. I still want, I got one coming in the door right now. There's not enough time. So you could have 25 hours a day and you still wouldn't be enough. So it is possible to do both. It is possible to do both well. It is possible to do both like world-class levels. And knowing first of all what that is in your mind, and then the cliche that I see on Instagram a lot that is so true is the most important decision that you make in your life is who you marry and the partner that you have kids with. Like it's unbelievable. And I got lucky. Man, did I get lucky. My wife Michelle is 10 times, like I thought she was going to be a great mom. She's 10 times the mom I thought she would that any mom could possibly be. It's amazing. We provide a great environment. We have 2 nannies a day, every single day. Our 3-year-old is bilingual because we had our kids in Mexico. We left Canada because we didn't think we'd have a great birth experience during COVID. We went down in 2021. We had our first child there in 2022. We were about to come back, then we found out we were pregnant, so we stayed there. We had our second child in 2023. We came back, then we got pregnant, came back, and then went back to have our child in Mexico because we wanted to give them all a second passport, and also have the freedom in the birth process compared to Canada. And so we had all 3 of our kids in Mexico, and the only the first one can talk, but she can switch from English to Spanish like a pro. It's incredible. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And all of our nannies here, even in Vancouver, are from either Mexico or Spain or somewhere. So they're speaking to our children all day long in Spanish. But they're there.
They say that raises their intelligence level too.
Kids will surprise you how smart they are, man. Like I can't believe what my kid does, not only in what she does, like in playing and stuff, but how they can manipulate you. Like you just out negotiated me. I am 46 years older than you, and you just and not through screaming, but actually through like negotiation. It's amazing.
True negotiation.
And so we set ourselves up so that I work right beside them, so I see them all day long. But I think it's great that the system that we're giving our kids. We're getting them. They play nanny, serious nanny. They're getting educated. They're beside us. They're with us. We do everything with them. We are the parents that take the kids into business class and into restaurants. So apologies in advance if I'm ever there with you and you don't like kids. But we just live with our kids, man. And so, if I were you, and that's what I wanted, then I would speak to people that have done it. And I would say, hey, what worked, what didn't, what would you do differently? And then on the flip side, like what I did to find my wife is I just asked women that knew a lot of women. I just said, hey, you know me, this is what I want. Do you know any women who kind of fit that? Because again, I'm not the kind of guy who goes out to a social event and goes home with 5 numbers, so I asked for people to help me. And I had this saying that everything in life is easier when you know more good people. And as a trainer, everything I've gotten in my life, it's because I knew good people. I met my wife, I had good training partners. So I got, strong and ripped when I was younger. And in business, most of my money I've ever made is because I had partnered up with people on stuff. But
what do you think that says about you?
I'm lazy. No, obviously, like you raise yourself up to be a good person that people want to help.
Of course, yeah.
And eliminating the toxic people from your life was probably helpful for me. I believe also that if you tell a good person that you want to achieve something, that good person is almost, there's almost like a program that operates in their brain that they will go out and either consciously or subconsciously try and find the thing that you need help with. And I first found this out like in 2011. I was going to start a certification for working out, Turbulence Training certification. And I did start it, but I just wasn't as passionate about the whole fitness industry as I hoped I would be. So I left the fitness industry. But when I told people I was starting a Turbulence Training certification and I wanted to help 1 million people transform their lives, the number of people that reached out to me and said, how can I help you with this? I was like, that's really interesting that I said I wanted to do something good, and all these people who I knew kind of, sort of, like passionately wanted to help me. That was a huge life lesson. And then, I've realized that throughout time, and I see this, and even when people tell me, like, what you've told me, I'm like, I want to tell you everything that I did. I want to tell you like what you should do. And, if anything else comes to mind, like this will be on my radar. It will always be on my radar. Other people are always on my radar because I want to help them. I want to make people's lives easier, like you want to make people's lives easier. And I think that if you know a lot of good people and you share with them your goal, then it will become easier for you to achieve it because people will go out of their way to help you. And this is for everything in life. And that's one of the secrets.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. I've had people tell me things and I'm like, oh, I definitely know somebody. For instance, yesterday, a friend of mine who comes to the gym sometimes, he opened up a series of smoothie shops, and he was asking me, he's like, hey, I need to get this thing, this plumbing fixed in the space. I literally like called 5 people yesterday. I'm like, hey, if you know a plumber in Jersey City, could you send me? And it's like, this serves me no benefit, but I'm like, oh, he's having a problem with this. I know if I was in that situation, I would want somebody to do the same for me. That's just the way I think. That's just the way I operate. Like, for instance, a lot of the what we do with the event was always, as a small business owner, I want to help other small businesses kind of grow through this event. So for me, I'm like, all right, well, if I keep putting that out there that I want to help people out just because it makes me feel better, then eventually somebody's going to do that for me as well. And I think that's what helps the world go round.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so when people ask me what my hobbies are, I don't really have any hobbies except for this one: collecting interesting people. And I don't mean like in my I don't mean like in my basement in my freezer. I mean like in my network, because the more good people it just solves so many problems. And when you said like there's no benefit to me, I think there actually is, because when I help somebody, like that brings me, in terms of work, it's one of the top 5 joys of work when I can help somebody. Like I'll usually post on my Instagram, go follow this person if you want help with X. And I'll do it totally out of surprise to somebody. And I'll send them like 500 Instagram followers in a day. And they'll be like overjoyed. And I'll be like, yeah, man, like I'm pumped up. Like I'm selfish about it because I love helping people that way. So I think you're on the same train. And, I really love what you're doing with the Strong New York thing. And, one day I'd love to get there.
Yeah, I'd love to have you there. So last question, and then I'll let you go from this because I know you're a busy man. What's the goal with the book? Because you've written multiple books before, and a lot of people are always like, one day I want to write a book. And you've done that multiple times already. What is the goal with this book? Like, where do you see it? What do you want the outcome to be?
Great question, man. And I have multiple goals for it. So obviously I want millions of people to buy the book, right? Yeah. And I did my first 3 books on my own without the correct help. And so this time I hired a guy who I promoted on my Instagram today by coincidence. His name is Kerry Oberbrunner, and he's helped publish John C. Maxwell and Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy and Dr. Peter Diamandis, some big names. And so Kerry Oberbrunner has been really helpful. He set up my Amazon right in a way that, you can set up your Amazon like as an amateur, like I did. And for my first 3 books, and it probably didn't get as many sales as it should have. So I worked with him, did it right. We're off to the races, have more sales in the first couple weeks that it's been out. It is out now. I just haven't promoted it to my email list, but it's got out a little bit earlier, so it's not just pre-order now. And I want to sell a lot of copies. I want to do really, really well on Amazon. We also want to get people to join we have a school community, we have a coaching program. We obviously want to get people to do that as well. But I also, it's a public service announcement. Like all the other things ignore my selfish reasons. It is a public service announcement for people to do a thinking approach to life, which, it's, I don't know how well that'll work out as a public service announcement based on what I know about humans, but the response to it has been better than expected because I knew that it was controversial and I knew there would be pushback. But I'm talking like special forces guys, and they're going, man, I wish you wrote this 5 years ago because I nearly destroyed my marriage.
No shit.
Yeah, because they were doing the 2 workouts a day when their wife said, like, let's go to the beach, and they said no. Like, wives don't like that, surprisingly. and there's a lot of people who just went down. They swung the pendulum too far. Fortunately, they didn't go too far, but some guys did. And, I know people that part of their divorce was caused by that. Mm-hmm. It's not the only thing, but part of it.
Yes.
And like, dude, I do not want that to happen because I'm like an old school, like I should have been born in the 1930s and been a father in the 50s. Like that's the kind of person I am. And to see marriages get destroyed, it bothers me. To see friends' marriages go down really bothers me. So I wrote it as a word of warning for sure.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I mean, listen, I think anybody out there listening, if you guys haven't found any value in this, you obviously must have had your ears clogged or something because,
or you couldn't understand my Canadian accent.
No, I see a ton of value in this, and you have me, I started writing some things down because you have me reconfiguring the way I think a little bit as well. I'm definitely one of these people that's overly disciplined. I have to do this and I have to do that. Otherwise, I can't operate the right way. But I think we start to put some of those constraints on our own life and our own mind to think that there's some benefit to it. But what you're what you're pushing against is what we all need to reevaluate. Sometimes we're just doing things to do things, and it's taken us away from the original goal of what we had in mind.
Right. There's discipline for discipline's sake and entertainment. Like I just call some of this stuff is complete entertainment.
Yeah.
A perverse form of procrastination, right? Because it's a good thing. It's not like you're sitting at home video gaming and binge eating, Big Macs. It's you're doing something that's considered good, but it's actually not helpful to you. So, and for people listening, like, what's this guy's life like? Like, I get up at, before 4 o'clock every day. Like, I still live a very disciplined life, but everything that I do is purposeful. So I get up at 4 o'clock because my kids are going to get up at 6, and I have to run a business with 20 employees and, a lot of responsibilities. And I do most of my work between 4 and 6 so that when the kids get up at 6, from 6 until 8, I'm with my kids. From 8 till 11, I work. Beside the kids, so I see them, and then from when they go down for the nap, I go to the gym and I have lunch, and then when I come back, I'll do some calls like this, and then I'm done at 4, and from 4 until 8, I'm with my kids, present, and my day is very structured, and I work out and exercise every single day, in some format. Like I go for a walk now, I'm beat up, so like that's my workout, and I eat very well, and I don't drink, I don't swear, I don't use pornography, I don't watch television. Like, it's not like a party life. It's not like over here goofing around. It's a very disciplined life, but it is all purposeful. And I know that it is exactly what I was meant to do because I've done that self-reflection, introspection. So I think that's the big thing here. People listening, there's probably only a couple of things that you really have to tweak because there's probably only a couple of things that are really dangerous to you. And then you kind of maybe modify them or cut them out, and your life will accelerate. And, one thing that we didn't even talk about that's in the book is it does show you how to be more disciplined. So the first part's the warning of, like going too far. Here's how to figure out if you are. The second part is here's how to use the effortless discipline systems to overcome any bad habit and put in any good habit. And then the third part is about raising your standards and changing your identity so that you don't need to rely on discipline at all in most cases, and in order to have a great life. So there's a lot more to the book than me just telling people not to do a cold plunge.
Well, real quick, because just for my own interest, you live such a very disciplined day. I like having structure in my day, but I like the versatility of, like, I could go and work out at 12 o'clock, I might go work out at 5 or 6 o'clock. With your day being so structured, how does that affect you if you do get thrown off? Let's say something happens, the kids are sick, or God forbid, whatever happens, and that throws your day off. How much does that affect you?
That's a great question. So yesterday, not last night, but the night before, our middle daughter is teething. So nobody tells you anything about teething when you have kids, but that's like a major problem. And so, she started screaming at 12:30 and wouldn't stop screaming. So I got up from 12:30 till 4 with her. And then our son, who's 7 months old, he got up. And my wife had gotten up for a little bit of time with our daughter. And my wife does need a little bit more sleep than me. So I came back and I got our son from 4 till 6:30. So I didn't have any of my work time. So I'm like mentally like, burning everything down in my brain. Or like, I'm just going to cancel everything today. Yeah. Eventually she gets up, we play with the kids, and I get back on track. And I just get back on track. Like I give myself permission to kind of like think, be angry at the world while I sit there in the dark with my kid, but I'm rocking them back to sleep, and I'm very grateful for the kids, and then I just get back on track, and it's like, okay, if I have to go and work out at 3 o'clock today, it's not ideal, but I'll do it. I'll figure it out, or I'll just today I'll just go for a walk, because again, I'm like beyond, I'm not doing the natural bodybuilding with Chris Bumstead, so I can just go for a walk today, and I an extra day before I go back to the gym. So I'm a lot more relaxed about things, but this is a plan. Okay, now I'm off the plan. Let's get back as close as possible to the plan. But with age and wisdom, you kind of go, if the plan doesn't get executed exactly,
it's okay.
Don't be stressed out about it, because you're just going to make things, you're just going to ruin your body by being stressed out about it.
Yeah. Well, Craig, listen, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Where could everybody buy the book? Where could everybody follow along with you? Of give us the rundown.
So darksideofdiscipline.com for the book and some extra goodies. Otherwise, just go to Amazon, ebook, audiobook, paperback, hard copy. They're all there. And
you have a coaching business as well.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. So we work with business owners, from like $500,000 a year to $15 million a year to like small businesses, and we help them. We have live events, and we do one-on-one coaching, and we provide custom business plans. So it's like personal training for a business, right? Yeah. It's very customized, and we help entrepreneurs in everything from online businesses to construction to financial services and stuff like that. So if people want to get their business and their life organized, that's what we help people with. And if people want to learn more about that, they can just message me on Instagram at Real Craig Ballantyne.
Yeah, and guys, he's great at answering, because he definitely answered me a couple of times.
Yeah, totally, man. That's the one place I spend time online.
Yeah. Well, Craig, listen, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you guys so much. Like, subscribe, share with a friend, and thank you guys for always staying strong.